Hello and welcome to the FinTech Newscast. My name's John, and this week we're lucky to have Jay Bregman, the founder and CEO of Thimble, an on-demand insurance provider. Please hit subscribe to keep up with that and the latest in FinTech news. Welcome to the podcast. We have a great interview this week, and as usual, my co-host Steve is here with me.
Hey, John. Good to be here.
In spirit, if not body, at least.
That's right.
Yeah, and our special guest for the week, Jay Bregman, the founder and CEO of Thimble. Welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, guys. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah, as we can see from your resume, you're a very busy guy, so we really do appreciate you being here. You're the CEO of Thimble. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, yeah. So I previously founded two other businesses. The last one was a ride-sharing company in London called Halo. And one of the things that I noticed was that as part of ride-sharing, of course, is the birth of the gig economy, people working in different ways, not the 9 to 5. I thought that was a trend that was going to continue and that there was going to need to be an evolution in these core business services, amongst them insurance, to meet this new type of working relationship that people would have. And so begin to really dig into that and came up with the idea that people should be buying business insurance the same way as they're buying everything else in the world right now, which is on demand and by the job, so that basically they could start out buying a discrete amount just for a single job if they wanted to use that to show to a client to be able to get insurance, get a job that required insurance. And if they wanted, they could continue that, or they could roll it to a month-to-month policy, but basically to create the most flexible kind of business insurance for the new types of businesses that were being created nowadays.
So this is all commercial insurance, and judging from the website, you can get it down to just a few hours in a day?
Actually, we are the only ones in America that can sell down to a single hour. So it's everything between an hour and a year. And we have a new Thimble monthly product, which is actually a true month-to-month contractless product. So basically, you pay for a month, and then if you want, you can continue paying. You get a 2-month policy, 3-month policy, 4-month policy. But we have basically completely reinvigorated the insurance product around commercial insurance. The last time that this sort of an update was done was sometime in the 80s. And we built that insurance product to allow people to buy in a much more flexible and cost-efficient way that suits really the small business and not just suiting the insurance company.
So the reason that other insurance companies haven't offered this, is there some kind of flexibility with mobile, I guess? But was there any kind of regulatory hurdles or other kind of operational issues you had to leap over to offer this kind of thing?
Huge. I mean, since the founding of Lloyd's, insuring, shipping, etc., the insurance industry across the world has been all focused on this annual policy that you pay in advance for and then earn the policy or use the policy over a year. It's so bad that actually the systems of the major insurance companies actually don't have the fields to allow you to sell by the day or by the hour in the systems or to report on that, etc. The regulators didn't have policies that basically were compliant to be able to be sold anything less than a year. So it really was this case of it's the way it's always been done. We saw that the market was changing, and the market is changing. And basically, we built a new product from the ground up, got it approved by regulators in the various states, and basically found an insurance company to be able to provide the liquidity, the backing to it, and have been selling this particular product for about 2 years now. It's been extremely successful. We've been expanding it to other product lines. And it's very clear that this is where business is going, right? The idea that when you're starting out a business, you have no idea what's going to happen. So the idea that you would have to lay out money for an annual insurance policy when you don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 months. And by the way, nowadays with COVID, nobody knows what's going to happen in the next 3 months.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
seems very dated a very dated point of view. But the real reason is because the legacy around annual policies is very, very expensive and time consuming to break. It really could not be done within a traditional insurance company. It had to be done by somebody like us.
Can you give us a sense, Jay, of both the types of workers you cover and also the size of the gig worker in the U.S. economy?
Yeah, so it's not really just gig workers. I mean, we're selling to businesses now that can have a crew of people working with them that's either employees or subcontractors, could be 10 people, that are in the organization. So it's not just gig workers, it's really embryonic small businesses, and even in some cases, small businesses that have a couple of employees. What we're trying to really nail is the genesis moment, the first policy that you buy. So 75% of our customers never had business insurance before. We are selling them their very, very first insurance policy. And often we're selling it as a smaller policy than a year, something that basically they would not have bought or been able to buy with others. So they are buying insurance earlier than they ever would. The types of businesses that we sell to, we sell these kind of broader categories. We sell a construction policy, which is a handyman and contractors policy. We have consultants and freelancers. We have beauty and fitness. All told, we have about 120 different types of businesses we sell today, and we plan to expand that substantially over the next year or two.
What channels are you using to actually distribute your product? Are you going through brokers, or you get consumers directly, or?
Yeah, so there's two areas. So we have a very vibrant direct business where people find us on Google or in other places. I mean, I think it reflects how people buy insurance today. If you're going to buy business insurance today, you do one of two things. You either search on Google or you call your insurance broker. Maybe it's your personal insurance broker, maybe it's a brother that works in the insurance industry, but you call an insurance broker and then you say, I need small business insurance. Do you do it? If not, who do I go to? Etc. So we want to be in both those areas. We want to dominate both those areas. And so we also have a very, very vibrant, we have thousands of brokers that are signed up. And what's in it for the brokers is generally the brokers really hate selling small business insurance because it's very, 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 very difficult to sell, time consuming, and it doesn't pay out that much. It's very small premiums. And also they're very volatile. So meaning the businesses are calling to make changes to the policy as they grow all the time. So what we do is we give them the opportunity to basically originate the policy, but not have to actually do the work of setting the policy up. That's all done self-service by the customer and by us. And they're able to earn a commission that is comparable, and in some cases even greater than the commission that they could earn with traditional insurance carriers where they have to do all the work.
There is something I've been curious about with commercial insurance these days with COVID-19. Is there some commercial policy that covers in some way for a pandemic?
It's very interesting that you say that. So about just almost exactly 2 years ago, in May of 2018, Marsh, the large global insurance company, actually released a product specifically for infectious business insurance or business interruption coming from pandemics. So the product was called Pathogen RX, and it was a quote. It's funny. They basically all of the quotes that they have about why the product is going to be so great are really prescient. The problem is they didn't sell a single policy in the 2 years between then and now. Partially because it was only accessible to larger businesses, partially because it was probably too expensive. But it's interesting to know that in some sense the coverage was available, but only to a really small minority of people working with the upper echelon brokers. Most people that had normal business insurance, about a third of American companies have business interruption insurance. Actually, since the SARS epidemic in 2008, that has excluded any losses due to pandemics, virus, bacteria, etc. And so that's causing quite a lot of a political and legal stir in the market right now, as a lot of these small businesses who bought this business interruption cover are now finding that that coverage is worthless for COVID, and some of them are going to lawyers or their legislators to try and resolve that.
That's interesting. I would have assumed that this kind of insurance would fall under the umbrella of what's called force majeure, which would force coverage, but I'm guessing that's not the case now, right?
Well, so Evan Greenberg, the CEO of Chubb, wrote an op-ed at the Wall Street Journal just last week, basically pointing out that if insurers were required, that had written this coverage, were required to cover, despite the exclusion, and that was cover the uninsured portion of business insurance, it could actually, the payments that they would have to make might exceed the entire $900 billion surplus of the global insurance industry, essentially bankrupt the industry. And technically that's correct, meaning that basically it's, that's the scale of what we're talking about. A pandemic is a systemic risk, right? Everybody makes a claim at the same time. And that's why it's not something that is traditionally insurable or insured by traditional types of insurance policies. There are some interesting new age technologies that can be used to address it potentially, but traditional insurance just doesn't work for when all of your clients have to basically file claims at exactly the same time. Nobody has the balance sheet other than the government to be able to, to basically sustain that.
And you got your start doing drone insurance. What is drone insurance?
So yeah, drone insurance is a big passion of mine, actually. So when we first started this business, we wanted a very discrete use case to be able to prove that we could do it, the insurance side and the technology. And in 2016, this was when the FAA in America was first liberalizing, drones for commercial activity. The pilot had to get a license. And then they could go out and fly the drone. But there was one problem, which was these pilots would they would get jobs for CNN or Reuters or any of the big real estate brokers to fly around houses. And those companies, the risk managers would ask them for aviation insurance because technically the drone is a plane, right? They were forced to go try and buy it from aviation brokers by the year, but they didn't want it for the year. They just wanted it for one or a couple of flights. So we created the world's first commercial episodic insurance admitted filing that allowed these drone pilots to buy on an app with no questions, just based on the location, between 1 and 8 hours of coverage. And we got that approved. It's live in all 50 states. It's the dominant product in America right now.
Yeah, that sounds so convenient. If you're getting together a few people for like a construction job, like you were saying, and just having the insurance for the time of that work, you're much more efficient to just be covered while you have the exposure.
It's not only efficient, but also it's economical, not only because it's a lower price than it would be for the year, but also we found about 70% of our customers expense the cost of the insurance back to the client. So basically, traditionally, the insurance is the responsibility of the provider, but if the client asks for insurance and you're able to provide an invoice that includes, hey, I bought this insurance for the one day that I was flying for you, with a discrete cost, you can add that to your invoice, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah, there's no question as to who that was for, I guess. Is there a big difference in the coverages you were doing before the shelter-in-place orders versus today?
Yeah, there is no difference at all. I mean, so our first of all, we sell general liability insurance and professional liability insurance. They don't really have a big impact from COVID or infectious disease spreading, et cetera. And they don't include this business interruption, cover. So right now we're still selling the same products. Although what I would say is we have been developing a number of new products that will allow us to sell to a broader range of businesses that are slightly larger. And partially the reason is because a lot of these companies, a lot of these small businesses out there, this disruption is a kind of systemic event that is causing them, we believe, to reevaluate what they really want out of their insurance. Whereas traditionally, if times are good, it's like the last thing on everybody's mind.
So you mentioned the impacts of COVID. How do you think this actually will change both your business model, your customers, and sort of the insurance landscape in, say, 3 to 5 years?
Well, look, I mean, what I see right now, based on all of the data that we have from the industry and also from all of the op-eds that are, from the traditional insurers, is the insurers that have been incumbents in the market, selling small business insurance for many years, the top companies, I think are in a very tough bind when it comes to the situation with this business interruption insurance, because if you pay out one policy, you sort of have to pay them all out, and obviously you can't afford to do that. And if you don't pay, you risk litigation or just general bad loss of reputation with your customers. So we kind of see this situation where a large part of small businesses in the US that hold this type of insurance are going to be looking for an alternative, and we want to be that alternative.
How do you think this pandemic will change sort of the entrepreneurial side of the business in terms of launching and growing and scaling a company?
Oh, well, look, I mean, no one is starting an insurtech company in the next, probably 6 to 12 to maybe even 18 months. The venture capital markets have been ravaged. These type of companies, at least in insurtech, are very cash intensive. You got to spend tons of money ahead of the curve to get the product, out there. It can take years. So I think there will be substantially less competition from new entrants. I also think that we are fortunate to have IC as an investor and many others. Other companies have been making kind of mass layoffs in our space, so they may not be in as great a position to respond to this. And others, like the incumbent insurance companies, are facing litigation threats, political pressures, etc. So likewise, it may be harder for them to really, to basically to turn this into some bit of an opportunity to be able to further their mission. But that's absolutely what we plan to do.
That's a great time to scale up, huh?
We think it's going to be, certainly. I mean, we're very product focused right now, but we believe that these lockdowns will end. We believe that there will be people starting businesses, not necessarily insurtech businesses, but Main Street businesses in the midst of all of this. And in some ways, starting in a recession can be very, very advantageous, because the costs of everything, rent, et cetera, are much lower. So for certain types of businesses, I think it will be a huge opportunity for growth.
Yeah, we were saying before we recorded that actually a lot of the companies that we take for granted now in terms of being the world beater companies really got its start, or their start rather, during the 08-09 financial crisis. So this could be a good time to basically start something. I believe also Mark Andreessen recently published something where he was saying that now we have to build. Like, this is the time where we build now. As you say, the rents are cheaper. Maybe labor could be cheaper as well. So if you have any sort of entrepreneurial bent, this could be the perfect time to get into the market with something that could really create more efficiencies for all the players.
Yes, and look, I certainly I think that great businesses happen at all points of the cycle, but there will be great businesses built now as well. The only question is, for certain types of businesses are just require more capital than others, and I think there's probably going to be a lot less capital available, particularly for very early stage startups, until the economy really returns.
Yeah, it looks like you've pivoted a few times in your career, and sounds like in response to what's going on in the world. Do you see what your next pivot will be, or your next expansion with or outside of Thimble?
So my first business, eCourier, was a technology-enabled same-day delivery company that was the very first to use mobile computers and GPS and auto allocation to make a courier fleet more efficient. It was sold to the Royal Mail, which is basically the post office over there. And out of that, I became very interested in how the iPhone, which was just coming out at that time, 2009, 2010, could be used to create this platform for better arranging consumer taxi rides. This is even pre-Uber, et cetera, and that turned into to Halo, and that was very exciting too. But I think what's more interesting than that is kind of the idea that the whole shift there is what's happening with the future of work. And I think what we're seeing right now is with Thimble and many others in the space is how do we adapt all of the really barnacle encrusted, core business, they're necessary business services like banking, like insurance, to this new way of working. And this new way of working is sort of an amalgam between the professional, and the personal. A lot of our customers, they are working only part-time, or they are working out of their house, and this was just not the way it was envisioned when the insurance industry kind of started out. So, but anyway, as to answer your question about what's next, I love the insurance industry. I think it is such a beautiful challenge to figure out ways to be able to sell products that are both compliant, but also, can be work both for the insurance company and for the customer in terms of pricing, in terms of number of questions, availability, etc. And there is so much complexity and opportunity in the insurance industry that I could very much see staying here for the rest of my career. I mean, it's really that big. It's just one of the biggest industries in the entire world. So I see Thimble as being starting out, yes, in drones, moving to SMBs, but I think there's a lot of things that we can do now that we really understand, even better than some of the insurance companies, how do we build products that customers really love, and insurance companies will see as interesting as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were saying that it's just such a cultural thing, and like you were saying, scrape off the barnacles is just a staid industry. And one thing that really rankles me or raises red flags is when somebody says, "Oh, that's the way we've always done it." I just, the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up with discomfort.
Well, it's worse than that in the insurance industry, because a lot of times in the insurance industry, you will hear people that are in the industry at carriers or brokers say, "Oh, it's the regulations, we can't do that." But actually, what we have found is the regulators are actually extremely open to innovations that will help customers, particularly SMB customers in times of need, like now, et cetera, et cetera. So the real thing is people just haven't tried, right? They haven't engaged in a dialogue, because, if you're in the insurance industry, creating a new product is a huge, massive undertaking. You got to go to all 50 states and get regulatory approval, and you never really know if it's going to work or not. So that's why all the products have regressed to the mean. Everybody's selling the same products, and it's a very commoditized industry, and we're really trying to change that.
But we're glad you're out there and helping small and medium-sized businesses stay insured, and it's part of what keeps them working. So, we wish the best of luck to you, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much. I really have enjoyed our conversation. I wish you guys the very best. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. That was Jay Bregman, the founder and CEO of Thimble, an on-demand insurance provider. Please hit subscribe to keep up with the latest in fintech news, and thanks for listening.